for those of you who didn't see it, here are a couple highlights from Kamala Harris's DNC speech that was generally incredibly well received. And even better, the DNC outperformed the RNC in amount of views. So that's also really good. Here's a couple highlights of Kamala Harris's speech.
Let me start by thanking my most incredible husband, Doug. And happy anniversary, Dougie. I love you so very much. As the eldest child, I saw how the world would sometimes treat her. But my mother never lost her cool. She was tough, courageous, a trailblazer in the fight for women's health. She taught us to never complain about injustice, but do something about it. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us.
See how instantly, like, I know we're just watching highlights right now, but even just seeing a little bit of this speech, she comes off as much more relatable, friendly, and unifying. That's something that really stood out to me throughout her speech. It seemed to be very, very focused on unifying people despite disagreements. And I think that that shows like a really good level of respectability for a political candidate. I mean, let's be real. Trump would be up here and be like, thank you. I know that all the immigrants didn't want to even see me up here right now. They would have rather had me shot. And like that would have been the whole speech, you know? But like with the DNC, we actually have some unifying rhetoric and some positive, hopeful messaging.
And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. Our nation, with this election, has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self.
And literally just like that, Kamala Harris is now far more patriotic than Trump could ever hope or dream to be. Because Trump, what does he do? He sows division. He literally capitalized on the division of this nation to win the election in 2016. Trump throws fuel on the fire. Trump essentially undermined the country that he claims to love and put first. He even passed tax write-offs and he passed tax bills and whatnot to benefit the wealthy. It just doesn't make any sense to me that Trump is still trying to capitalize on this persona of a patriot when Trump is not a patriot. At least he's not really for America first because he doesn't even care about all Americans. He pits Americans against each other. But Kamala Harris, here she is actually acting like a fucking grown-up. She understands that there are disagreements. There are different political parties. People have different ideas. But she is vowing to be a president to everybody regardless of that and to put the country before herself. I don't think Trump does that at all. Like, I genuinely don't think that Trump puts America first. At least if he does, how come his tax bills didn't benefit everyday Americans? How come his tariffs actually hurt everyday Americans? How come he further divided everyday Americans?
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump.
That's true. That's another thing also. Donald Trump, he claims to love America. He claims to put America first. He's the patriot. Yet he constantly undermines and attacks America's institutions. He attacks the criminal justice system, even going as far as to cast doubt among voters' minds as to whether or not they can even trust their country to provide a fair and free election. Remember when Trump said it might be okay to undo the Constitution if there's voter fraud, which of course he then tried to walk back on?
When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own...
This is also really good that she's saying, like, reiterating the attack on law enforcement, because that's something right there that appeals more to independents, moderates, Republicans even.
Own party begged him to call off the mob and send help. He did the opposite. He fanned the flames. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse. Consider.
There you go. Also, fellow everyday Americans, a jury found Donald Trump guilty on 34 felony counts. Does that not mean anything? No, it doesn't. Trump undermines that. He doesn't care about America first. He doesn't care about American institutions at all. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with criticizing American institutions. But Trump, what he does is just directly attack them and say they need to be done away with, and that's the end of it. And that they're all biased against him. The end. That's pretty much Trump's fucking argument. It's like a narcissist baby throwing a temper tantrum.
What he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy.
Dude, Republicans are seething right now. She's literally using like Republican-esque rhetoric, releasing violent terrorists on our soil, on our American citizens. Oh my God, dude. That's like the Republican talking point for immigrants, but she's using it on Trump supporters who attacked the Capitol. That is fucking priceless. You just know Trump supporters are seething at that.
His explicit intent to deploy our active duty military against our own citizens. Consider the power he will have, especially after the United States Supreme Court just ruled that he would be immune from criminal prosecution.
That's true, but for clarity, it's immune from criminal prosecution for acts committed while president. It doesn't mean that Trump, as a regular citizen, is immune. It's still, however, very fucking dangerous, but what Trump wants is exactly that. When you look at the Republicans' ultimate goal to gut the FBI and to gut the Department of Justice and to consolidate more and more power in the executive branch, that is what Trump wants. And I can tell you right now, that is not democracy, and that's not what America wants.